Well, now that we know the basics of color science, we're going to get to the thing that everybody is wanting to know, which is how do you filter out the distractions? So the first thing that we need to do is pick 3 things on our face. So we have to look at our face, okay? And I recommend having a nice big mirror and being set back from it, because anybody that's looking at you is looking at you from a distance. They're not all up in your face, okay? So no magnifying mirrors, a regular mirror, sit back, look at your face, and I want you to pick, just for now, 3 spots on your face that are distracting to you. Because the truth is, what the beauty industry has done is it has told us that in order to look beautiful, we need to cover our entire face in makeup. And our face is made up of oil and water, and it gives a beautiful iridescent look when it is not covered. You see all of this beautiful iridescence that I have naturally highlighting my face. Lots of times I sit there and I'll just look at Zoe, my daughter, who never wears any makeup, and I'm just awed by the beauty of just the top of her cheekbones, or just the way the light is hitting her face. And when we put makeup all over our face, we are dulling down our natural iridescence. And what the beauty industry has taught us is that we need, in order to take out a couple of distractions, we got to cover our whole face. But why would we do that? We're just going to get the specific distractions that we have and keep the beauty of our natural skin. So first things first, we're going to look at our face. So I'm going to take my mirror and I want to find the things that are sticking out to me the most. So for me, I have an area right here that sticks out to me. It's just not uniform, right? I see it when I look in the mirror. This area right here, I've been reintroducing some food in the diet that I've been doing, and my face is not liking it. So I've got this area, and that's really it. But if I was gonna get picky, I'm gonna pick my under eye. I have some freckles there that cause the appearance of an under eye. So those are my 3 areas. I've got my areas, but now instead of covering the whole area, what I now need to do is I need to find the darkest points within the area, right? So if I am looking at this area, and I'm going to get up close, that whole area is not discolored, right? This thing right here is dark. I've got a point right here that's dark, and I've got a point right there that's dark. When you have points of darkness in your face, it can cause a whole area to look as though it is discolored, when that's not really the reality. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the darkest points of each distracting area first, and we're going to determine what color it is. So Demi has a great Demi code to identify color. The first question you're going to ask about a specific point, and remember, you have to ask this question about each point that you're looking at, is, let's do this guy, is it excessively dark? Meaning, is it darker than my skin tone? I'm going to say it is. It sticks out. It's darker than my skin tone. Okay? So that means it has to be in the blue family. All right? So if it's excessively dark, we know that it has to have some blue in it. The next thing I'm going to ask myself about that spot is it excessively saturated? Saturated means think lots of color, like a saturated picture, or something that's bright or vibrant, okay? So let's look at that. It's not really dull, right? It does have some vibrance. It's not muddy. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, yes, it is saturated. So if it's saturated, it has to have some red in it, right? So we know that if it's excessively dark, it has to have some blue in it. If it's excessively saturated, then it has to have some red in it. So what if it's excessively dark and excessively saturated? You put those two colors together, and what color do you get? You get violet, or like in the purple family. So if it's excessively dark and it's excessively saturated, then you've got your in-between color, violet. So we now know that this is most likely violet. The opposite on the color wheel for violet is going to be yellowish, orangish, depending on how dark it is, all right? Now, let's look at this right here. So we've got a couple of points in here. I'm gonna ask myself, is it excessively dark? It's a little dark. It's a little dark. So we know it's got some blue in it. I'm gonna ask myself, is it excessively saturated? Yeah, it's bright, it sticks out. So I know it's got red in it, and I know that the saturation seems to be more than this, which means it's got more red in it. So I know that it's probably in the violet family, but it's more towards the red violet family. So the opposite on the color wheel for a red violet is going to be a greenish yellow. So I know I'm going to need to address this with a greenish yellow. Now, we know how to identify red. We know how to identify blue. We know how to identify violet. What about green? So let's look again at this area. So we know this guy, he's a little bit saturated, and he's dark. What about this guy? So is it excessively dark? Yes, it's darker than my skin tone. Is it excessively saturated? No, it kind of looks muddy or brownish. So we know if it's not excessively saturated, and we know that if it's muddy, it's probably in the green family. So green is going to be anything on your face that may look brown. It may have an orange tint. It's like a freckle. Okay, so green is going to be murky, muddy. You can't really tell. It's dark, but you can't really tell what color it is. That's going to be your green. All right. Now, what about orange? Orange is extremely saturated. Think about a neon sign or a flame. It's actually almost 99% chance that it's not orange on your face. So if it's saturated and it's not excessively dark, then we know it's a 99% chance that it's red. But there are sometimes, very rarely, maybe in an unpopped zit, that you may see that orange color, but it's really, really unlikely. So that's how you would identify orange. Orange is not dark. It's actually very, very bright, and it is very, very saturated. Okay. Now, what about yellow? Yellow is the weakest, brightest color. I'm going to show you an example on my face. So I've got a lot of melasma in here, which is, melasma would be, what is it? It's muddy, right? So it's going to be in the green family. But in between there, which is causing areas of distraction, there's bright areas. These bright areas are yellow. So to correct something that's yellow, or to even brighten something that's yellow, we would use the opposite on the color wheel, which would be a purple or a violet. We're always, always, always going to be doing the opposite on the color wheel. But right now, we're just dealing with the distractions. So let's get to it. I need to pick a brush that is appropriate for the size of the point that I'll be dealing with. Most likely, you are going to be dealing with one of these two brushes. This is your spot brush, which I use 99% of the time. And this is your bright brush. This would be for a little bit less precision. For starting purposes, I definitely recommend always using the spot brush. So we're gonna look at our 3 distractions. Now, when we touch our face, we can draw blood to it and it can make the area look more colorful than it actually is. So we're gonna do what Kara, the creator of Saint, likes to say. We're gonna place and pray. So we're gonna put that color there and then we're gonna move on to the next distraction. So we already determined that this is excessively dark, but it's also got some saturation, which means it's violet. So the opposite on the color wheel is going to be a yellowish orange. So I am going to do YO1. So YO1 is a yellowish orange, okay? And that is going to be for a purpley blue distraction. So I'm going to put the tiniest amount possible that I can on my brush. And I want to just address that one point of distraction. It's important that you get just on the point, because if you go outside of the point, you're gonna create what we call a halo effect, meaning this color is gonna brighten the area outside of the point of distraction, and now you're gonna have another distraction that you have to deal with. So it's really important that you only put the color on the color. So I'm gonna get my mirror and I'm just gonna touch the darkest point. And when you do that, if it's the right color, it should be like a magic eraser. You shouldn't need more product. If it's not like a magic eraser, what that means is you don't have the right color and you need to adjust, okay? But that was the right color. So now I'm going to move to the next area of distraction within that area, and we're gonna go to right here. We determined that it's darker than my skin tone, but it is not saturated, which means it's in the greenish blue family. So for greenish blue, we're gonna do a reddish orange, right? So this right here is a reddish orange, meaning there's more orange in it than there is red. This right here is OR, orangish red, which means there's more red than there is orange. And this is R1, which is just red. Because this is on the darker side and I have a medium skin tone, I'm going to go with the one in between. I'm going to do OR1 and I'm going to just put it right. I'm wiping off the previous color and I'm tapping the least bit of product possible on my brush. I'm gonna find that spot and go for the darkest spot. Okay. Okay, so now we already see that it's starting to flow, right? I'm gonna move away from that area just for the time being, because I'm gonna let it settle. Let's move on to the nose. So we already determined that it is a little bit dark. You do see it, right? But it's really saturated, which means it's definitely more of a red-violet color. So what we're going to do for a red-violet color is we're going to use a greenish yellow. So I'm going to do the opposite on the color wheel. This is flat out yellow. That's gonna be for purple, right? So I'm gonna go to this greenish yellow and I'm going to hit just those really highly saturated areas. See how it's just disappearing? Now, it can be tempting once you get those darkest points to just cover the whole area. Don't get lazy, okay? Really just cover those darkest areas, take a step back and reevaluate. Is it still distracting? It's a little bit still distracting. So let's look at it again. Now we've got, what are the darkest points? This is the darkest point right here. And it's not really saturated, right? So what does that mean? It means it's excessively dark. It's not excessively saturated, which means it's got to be in the blue family, right? So now I have to switch my colors. I'm gonna actually do this one right here, which is the YO, because it's not so dark, but it is kind of dark. So I'm gonna assume that it's more of a purpley blue instead of a true blue. Okay, so now where's the next darkest spot? Right in here. And that is dark, but it does look a little bit saturated. So I think that I'm gonna use a yellow because I think it's mostly violet. Okay, now I'm gonna take a step back. Is that area distracting anymore? It's not, right? So let's go back to our original area that we were working on. So now I see there's darker points in here that are a little bit distracting. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna ask myself, what's the darkest point in the area? Right here, right here, right here, and right here. So let's take this first one. Is it excessively dark? Meaning, is it darker than my skin tone? It's dark, it's a little bit darker, but it's not like way dark, okay? Is it saturated? It's actually a little bit muddy, I think. So that means it has to have some green in it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the red for it. And since it's a little bit dark, I'm gonna do a reddish orange. Okay. My next point is right here. It is excessively dark, but it's also saturated. It's definitely violet. So I am going to do my yellowish orange on that spot. Just on that tiny spot. And there's another one right here. And right there. Take a step back. Do you see now how it's starting to really flow? Everything's starting to flow. What we want is a face that flows. We do not want to take that spot and make all of the color go away. Because if we do that, it's actually going to become more of a distraction. So that's the basics of getting started with your distractions. You look at your face, pick 3 areas, find the darkest points within those areas. Ask yourself, is it excessively saturated or is it excessively dark? And from there, you determine the color and you get to work. Only do those 3 areas to begin with. Otherwise, you're going to get so overwhelmed. And remember, take a step back, look at yourself in the mirror and see if the area is still distracting to you. If it's not, move on with your day because nobody's looking at you like this. All right, guys, let me know if you have any questions. Bye.